The hospital doors swung open. A wave of crisp autumn air washed over Kioma. It did little to soothe the chill that had settled deep within her. In her arms, she cradled her newborn daughter, a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft pink blanket. The baby slept peacefully, oblivious to the storm brewing in her mother's heart. Kioma had longed for this moment, the arrival of her child. But now, a profound sense of unease overshadowed her joy. Something felt terribly wrong. She had hoped her husband Emeka would be there to greet them, his face beaming with pride. But the hospital lobby was empty, save for a lone security guard who barely glanced her way. Disappointment pricked at Kioma, sharp and insistent. It was a familiar sting, one she had learned to endure over the course of their marriage. Emeka was a man of ambition, often consumed by his work. His priorities were clear, and Kioma often found herself relegated to the periphery of his life. As she stepped out of the hospital and hailed a taxi, a wave of loneliness crashed over her. The city lights blurred through the car window, reflecting the turmoil within her. The joy of motherhood, the overwhelming love for her daughter, felt tainted by a growing fear. She was alone, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, and her heart ached with a nameless dread. The weight of unspoken anxieties pressed down on her, threatening to suffocate the fragile hope she clung to. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. The taxi pulled up outside their modest apartment building. Kioma paid the driver and stepped out, her legs shaky beneath her. As she entered their small apartment, a wave of disappointment washed over her. The place was eerily silent, shrouded in a semi-darkness that mirrored her mood. There were no balloons, no welcoming banners, no signs of celebration for the newest member of their family. Emeka was nowhere to be seen. Kioma gently laid her sleeping daughter in the crib, her movements mechanical. She had meticulously prepared this space, her heart filled with love and anticipation. Now it felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. The silence of the apartment was deafening, amplifying her sense of isolation. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in, suffocating her with their indifference. She wandered into the kitchen, her steps echoing in the stillness. A single plate sat on the table, remnants of a hasty meal. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, both physical and emotional. She was exhausted from the birth, from the journey home, from the crushing weight of her husband's absence. As she sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands, a single tear escaped, tracing a lonely path down her cheek. Days melted into nights, each one a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and hushed lullabies. Kioma poured all her love and energy into caring for her daughter, whom she named Adaeze, daughter of the king. Adaeze was a ray of sunshine in the bleak landscape of Kioma's life, her laughter a sweet melody that momentarily chased away the shadows. But even Adaeze's infectious joy couldn't fill the gaping hole in Kioma's heart. Emeka remained distant, his presence in the apartment fleeting and perfunctory. He would disappear for hours on end, consumed by his work, his phone calls, his own world where Kioma and Adaeze seemed to have no place. When he was home, he barely acknowledged his daughter's existence. His gaze would slide past her as if she were invisible, his attention solely focused on the television or his laptop. Kioma would watch them, her heart aching, as Adaeze reached out with tiny hands, desperate for her father's attention. She would try to engage Emeka, to draw him into their little world of giggles and gurgles, but her attempts were met with indifference, his responses curt and dismissive. One night, after another exhausting day, Kioma finally snapped. Emeka had come home late, his shirt reeking of alcohol, his eyes glazed over with indifference. He barely acknowledged Kioma's presence as he stumbled into the bedroom, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. "Emeka!" Kioma's voice was low, choked with unshed tears. "Can you hold Adaeze for a moment? I need to bathe." Emeka grunted, his eyes already closed. He made no move to take his daughter from her arms. "Emeka, please!" Kioma pleaded, her voice cracking. "I'm exhausted!" He opened his eyes, his gaze cold and sharp. "Must you bother me with these trivial matters, Kioma?" he snapped. "Can you not see I am tired?" Kioma stared at him, her heart breaking. "She is your daughter too," she whispered, her voice thick with pain. Emeka scoffed, turning away from her. "She is a girl," he muttered. "What use is a girl?" Desperate for support, Kioma reached out to her mother-in-law, Mama Ngozi. Surely she would understand. Surely she would offer some comfort in the face of Emeka's indifference. But Mama Ngozi's response, delivered over a crackling phone line, was far from comforting. "Chioma, you know how important it is for Emeka to have a son," she said, her voice laced with a practiced sympathy that did little to soothe Chioma's raw emotions. "A son to carry on his name, to inherit his legacy." "But Mama," Chioma protested, her voice trembling, "Adaeze is his legacy too. She is our daughter." "A daughter is a blessing, yes," Mama Ngozi conceded, "but a son is an heir. You must give Emeka a son, Chioma. It is your duty." Chioma hung up the phone, her heart heavy with a mixture of anger and despair. She was trapped, she realized, caught in a web of societal expectations and gender bias, her own happiness deemed insignificant in the face of tradition.